Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet. For those of you who don't know her, she's a true expert in the field of autism. I believe the preeminent expert in the field of autism in our time or any time. She's been working in this field for how many decades?
4 decades.
4 decades.
4 decades.
And working with the entire spectrum. We're talking about very small children, infants, all the way up through senior citizens. One of the many things that I love about Dr. Grand-Pichet is that she looks at individuals that are on the autism spectrum as individuals on the autism spectrum. She sees them as entire whole people that have many needs and looks to address those needs. But she also looks at the whole unit around that person, the family, the community, and tries to help all of us. And that is life-changing. I know that for a fact. Because my family was changed by the services that she helped to provide through the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm eternally grateful.
And we enjoyed every step.
That's so not true, but thank you for lying about it. In any case, I'm thrilled that she is here with us for this period of time to answer your questions. You can be writing into us on the live feature at autism-live.com or at any one of the other sites. We'll be checking it on Facebook in just a minute. And we love it when you guys write in on Facebook and tell us where you are in the world, because that's particularly fun. Okay, I do want to get started, though, with a question that was sent to us a couple of weeks ago by a friend of the show. David Phillips has been on the show before, and he is a really wonderful young man. He has his own website now, Unlocking the Keys to Autism, and he asked specifically if we would get to this question. He says, so my question is, in 2013, as part of the new diagnostic criteria for autism, they got rid of Asperger's syndrome in the DSM-V. But Dr. Doreen had said that if you were already formally diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, that you should be grandfathered in until you had to qualify for insurance funding again, but if it was a first-time diagnosis, the professionals that diagnose autism were supposed to follow the new DSM-V diagnostic criteria for autism, which would mean there would be no Asperger's syndrome. But an individual that I know, her brother was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in 2016 as an adult, and told this individual,
I told us.
and excuse me, thank you, and I told this individual that I did not think that this diagnosis was valid because of the new DSM-V diagnostic criteria for autism taking out Asperger's syndrome. Now, I told her the one way that I thought it could be valid is if they diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and then listed Asperger's syndrome as an Asperger's type as part of a modifier or specifier. That is the only way I told her that I thought it could be listed, but that cannot be the actual diagnosis. So I would like some clarification from Dr. Grand-Pichet on this issue, yada, yada, yada. And I just want to clarify for people that he is referring to right before the diagnostic criteria came out. We filmed an episode with you where you talked about, but this was in 2013, and you talked about, here is what will happen, this is how it will happen.
That's right. That's right.
So that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, sounds good. Hi, DJ. Nice to hear from you again. So let me address your question here. Yes. So you are right, what you said in terms of the DSM-V does not have a diagnosis called Asperger's. It has a diagnosis of ASD, Asperger's type. So anyone who is diagnosing after the DSM-V came out, essentially, usually when a new DSM comes out, we give about 6 months, maybe 8 months of time for clinicians to learn the new DSM. And so basically after the DSM-V came out, which was back in 2013, By 2014 or so, anybody should be diagnosing correctly, which basically means they should be diagnosing with ASD, Asperger's type, for this individual. Now, I just want to tell you that we shouldn't get hung up on the word valid, because there's a lot of people who are still to this day, believe it or not, I still see diagnoses of Asperger's. And I'm like, okay, they didn't know, they can't do that. I still see a lot of incorrect use of DSM-V. It just happens because clinicians haven't taught themselves everything and they haven't read all the details, and possibly the person who did this diagnosis is not specializing in ASD, but is perhaps a pediatrician or is like a broader practice. So they don't really know exactly the wording to use. Right now, I still get a lot of people who diagnose with an ASD and they will write something like ASD level 1. That doesn't mean anything at all. Like, you are not supposed to use levels. You're supposed to say requires support, requires substantial support, etc., etc. And also, even if you say level 1, which essentially means this individual doesn't need a lot of support, you're going to have to say which domain. You know, level 1 in what? In social communication or in repetitive behaviors? So a lot of people still use the terminology incorrectly. That doesn't necessarily mean that the individual who received that diagnosis didn't have a valid diagnosis. It's not valid for the purposes of, I mean, an insurance company could come back and say, this diagnosis doesn't work, like it's not valid. We're not going to fund it. Go get the right wording. But it doesn't mean that the individual does not have the symptoms of Asperger's. So I think we don't want to get too into the terminology here. But you know, a lot of I wouldn't assume that the person isn't actually suffering from the same symptoms. I would just say that perhaps the person who diagnosed them hadn't kept up with the DSM terminology.
There you go. So hopefully that helps to clarify. And we had made the comment last week that it's never a good idea to argue with somebody about what they say their diagnosis is unless you're a qualified person. Just, etiquette.
Yeah.
You know,
and maybe you were doing it from kindness, but, you know, let them go and experience their own thing, and either that diagnosis will be accepted by their insurance or their payer, or it won't, in which case they'll have to go get it reworded correctly.
There you go. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back, please, and we're going to be checking in on Facebook when we come back, so please stick with us.